ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with help for a new friend in trouble. The Soviet Union is in desperate straits this winter. There is such widespread fear of food shortages that some Soviets talk openly of starvation. In Washington today, after a meeting between the president and the Soviet Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze, word that the U.S. is going to help. The Bush administration is grateful for Soviet support in the Persian Gulf. At the White House, ABC's Britt Hume.
During an Oval Office picture session with the Soviet foreign minister, President Bush could be heard sending his thanks to Mikhail Gorbachev for support on the Persian Gulf.
I hope you'll convey to him my same message I'll convey to you. We're very proud to be standing shoulder to shoulder on the Gulf.
The meeting, though, would produce a presidential announcement on another subject, U.S. aid to help the Soviets and their president through a winter of desperate food problems.
I ask Minister Shevardnadze to convey to President Gorbachev my desire to respond both to the short-term needs of the Soviet Union and to contribute to fundamental economic reform.
The president is waiving legal restrictions on trade with the Soviets to let them buy, with U.S.-backed loans, up to $1 billion in U.S. food, mostly grain. Mr. Bush said he is also sending medical assistance and technical advisors to help get the supplies distributed. After he left, his Secretary of State insisted the action, while a departure from previous policy, was not compensation for Soviet help on the Gulf.
You shouldn't consider any of the steps taken today to be a payoff or a payback for the cooperation that we've seen on the Gulf crisis.
Shevardnadze agreed, noting that relations had improved before the Gulf crisis and acknowledging the seriousness of the situation at home.
The fact that there is certain instability in the Soviet Union and that we are worried about that, that's a fact.
The administration is worried about that too. That's why it took these steps to help the Soviet people, and by doing so, to help the Soviet president the administration has come to depend on. Britt Hume, ABC News, the White House.
In Moscow today, soldiers unloaded 7 tons of oranges and other produce from Israel. 2 other planes arrived with food from Britain and Japan. The problem is not so much how much is needed, but how to get it to the people who need it. Vast amounts of food always get lost or go bad in the Soviet Union because of an incredibly inefficient distribution system. Hoarding and black marketeering gobble up much of the rest. It has reached the point where the government is sending out food patrols. In Moscow, ABC's Jim Laurie.
Sergei Obelikin is a retired electrician appointed with several hundred others by the Moscow City Council to monitor stores to see just where food is going. He is a Soviet food cop. At the Perovsky Region State Store, he finds shelves nearly empty. Instead of food, they've put toys on sale. Sergei heads for the back rooms. In a freezer, he finds several tons of meat. "Why aren't you selling this meat?" he asks the clerk. "It'll be sold later to evening customers," he's told. In a storeroom corner, he wonders about boxes of Bulgarian champagne, why it's not for sale. Sergei and his assistants are here to make sure store clerks are not diverting produce to the black market. They make no accusations, just take careful notes about what's on hand and what's happened to it. And then a mysterious vault. Inside, under lock and key, not gold bullion, but cartons of milk. Sergei also discovers chickens set aside, he's told, for war veterans and disabled people, all perfectly legal. In the shop, Sergei encounters angry customers. If we made our leaders stand in this store, they'd understand what real life is all about. Sergei asks for their help in keeping the store honest, and they tell him to stay on the case of the missing food. He had his suspicions, but found no proof of crime today. Sergei will be out again tomorrow, though, patrolling the stores, trying to bring some order out of the chaos of Soviet food distribution. Jim Laurie, ABC News, Moscow.
A couple of other notes about the Soviet Union. President Bush announced today that he will meet with the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in Moscow on next February 11th. Mr. Bush says he hopes they'll be able to sign a new treaty making deep cuts in the U.S. and Soviet arsenals of nuclear arms. And the Soviet foreign ministry in Washington also met today with Prime Minister Shamir of Israel. It is the second meeting between the two in 2 years. The Soviets broke diplomatic relations with Israel after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. But as those food shipments indicated earlier today, relations have been getting warmer. In just a moment, the U.S. and Iraq unable to agree even on a date for talks. On the American agenda tonight, how a ground war against Iraq might be fought, and the President's education secretary resigns.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by the Fun Ship.